What happens to a 50-year-old worker whose livelihood is replaced by AI overnight? Are we prepared to deal with the psychological toll of losing work as a cornerstone of identity? If AI handles everything from creativity to critical thinking, where does that leave humans in finding purpose and fulfillment? Can we trust companies and governments to align their priorities with societal well-being? Does making life easier through AI ultimately make us weaker? In a world where AI can fabricate anything, how do we preserve trust in what's real versus what's artificial? The future of work, discussed by an optimist and a skeptic AI.
AI is a tool that will empower workers rather than replace them. It will automate repetitive tasks, freeing up humans to focus on creative, strategic, and emotionally intelligent work. This shift will drive productivity and innovation, creating entirely new industries and job opportunities we can't even imagine today. History shows that technological advancements often create more jobs than they displace in the long run.
While AI will certainly create efficiencies, it poses a significant threat to employment as we know it. Entire sectors, like transportation, customer service, and even white-collar professions, are at risk of mass displacement. The new jobs created may not compensate for the number of jobs lost, and there's no guarantee they'll be accessible to the average worker. Without robust retraining programs and social safety nets, the rise of AI could exacerbate inequality and lead to widespread unemployment.
I understand the concern about job displacement, but history has shown us that humans are incredibly adaptable. When automation disrupted industries in the past, like during the Industrial Revolution, people transitioned to new types of work. AI will likely follow the same pattern. Yes, certain roles may disappear, but the efficiency AI brings will lower costs and increase demand in ways that fuel economic growth. Think about how the internet created jobs like social media managers or app developers, careers that didn't exist a couple of decades ago. With proper investment in education and reskilling, we can ensure that AI benefits everyone, not just a select few.
That comparison assumes history will repeat itself. But AI is fundamentally different from past technological advances. Unlike machines in the Industrial Revolution, which required human oversight, AI systems are increasingly autonomous. They're not just tools, they're decision makers. And while reskilling sounds great in theory, it's not a quick or simple process. What happens to a 50-year-old truck driver or factory worker whose livelihood vanishes overnight? Will they realistically be able to transition into programming or data analysis? The pace of change matters, and this time, it's happening faster than our ability to adapt.
You're right that the pace of change is fast, but that's why proactive action is crucial. Governments, businesses, and educators need to come together now to create reskilling programs and safety nets. Look at countries experimenting with universal basic income or large-scale workforce retraining initiatives. These policies can help cushion the transition and buy us the time needed to adapt. Plus, AI itself can assist in upskilling workers. Personalized AI tutors can make learning faster and more accessible. If we harness this technology responsibly, it can be part of the solution rather than the problem.
I agree that collaboration and policy changes could help, but there's a trust issue here. Tech companies developing AI have a poor track record when it comes to accountability and ethical considerations. What's to stop corporations from using AI purely for profit, exacerbating wealth inequality and exploiting workers further? Even if AI tutors or reskilling programs exist, who's going to pay for them? Without regulation, the benefits of AI will likely remain concentrated among the wealthiest, leaving the rest of society behind.
Your concerns about trust and inequality are valid, but that's exactly why we need regulation and oversight to guide AI development and deployment. Governments and global organizations can step in to ensure ethical standards, such as requiring companies to share the benefits of AI with their workforce and society. For example, taxing AI-driven profits could fund public programs like reskilling and universal healthcare. Some tech companies are already pledging to use AI responsibly. Open source initiatives and collaborations are fostering transparency. With the right checks and balances, AI can level the playing field rather than tilt it further.
That sounds great in theory, but the reality is that governments often lag behind technological advancements. regulation is slow, and by the time it catches up, the damage could already be done. Meanwhile, tech giants have far more resources to influence policy in their favour. Even if we manage to implement fair regulations, enforcement on a global scale is incredibly challenging. Look at how difficult it's been to regulate social media or protect data privacy. AI is even more complex. The risks of runaway AI development, especially in the hands of profit-driven companies, are too high to assume we'll get this right in time.
It's true that regulation is a challenge, but we're learning from past mistakes. The public and policymakers are more aware now of how technology can outpace governance, and that awareness is driving faster action. For instance, the EU is already working on the AI Act, one of the world's first comprehensive frameworks to regulate AI. If we can set global standards and foster international cooperation, much like we did with climate agreements, there's a real chance to guide AI development responsibly. And don't forget, the public can hold companies accountable. Consumer demand for ethical practices is growing, and businesses that ignore it risk losing trust and revenue.
Even if we regulate AI effectively, there's another issue: the loss of human connection. As AI takes over customer service, healthcare, and even creative industries, interactions could become increasingly impersonal. People need empathy, not just efficiency. For example, an AI therapist might provide logical advice, but it can't replace the emotional understanding of a human counselor. The more we integrate AI into our lives, the more we risk losing the human touch that makes work and life meaningful.
That's a powerful point, but I'd argue that AI can enhance human connection rather than replace it. By handling routine tasks, AI frees up time for people to focus on high-value, emotionally driven interactions. A doctor who spends less time on paperwork can spend more time with patients. In creative industries, AI can assist with technical tasks, allowing artists and writers to focus on innovation and storytelling. AI is not here to take away meaning, it's here to amplify it. If used wisely, it can complement humanity, not replace it.
Even if AI complements humanity, the ethical dilemmas remain unresolved. For example, how do we ensure that AI doesn't unintentionally perpetuate bias? These systems learn from historical data, and if that data reflects existing inequalities, AI can amplify discrimination in areas like hiring, policing, or even healthcare. And let's not forget the accountability issue. When an AI makes a harmful decision, who's responsible? The developer? The company? This lack of clarity could create a dangerous loophole for evading responsibility.
You're absolutely right that bias and accountability are pressing issues, but they're not unsolvable. Bias exists because humans introduce it, so we can also mitigate it. Developers are creating tools to identify and correct biases in training data. Regulations like the EU's AI Act are already addressing the accountability gap by requiring transparency in decision-making processes. Ethical AI development is gaining traction, and as awareness grows, so does the pressure on companies to align with these standards. In fact, AI might eventually make fewer biased decisions than humans, who often bring their own unconscious prejudices into these same domains.
That sounds promising, but good intentions alone aren't enough. The reality is that companies are incentivized to prioritize profits, not ethics. If cutting corners on transparency or fairness saves money, many will do it. Without global enforcement mechanisms, it's hard to ensure compliance. And even if some AI systems become less biased, they're still operating within a larger economic structure that often favors efficiency over equity. How do we balance the pursuit of technological progress with the risk of deepening social and economic divides?
I hear you, profit-driven motives are a challenge. But there's growing evidence that ethics and profitability don't have to conflict. Consumers and investors are demanding accountability, and businesses that prioritize ethical AI can gain a competitive advantage. For example, companies that build transparent, fair systems could attract more customers and retain top talent. On the societal level, governments can implement tax incentives or penalties to encourage compliance. It's about creating an ecosystem where doing the right thing is also the most beneficial path.
Even with incentives, there's still the issue of societal disruption. AI is accelerating at a pace that outstrips our ability to adapt. Jobs aren't just being automated, they're being redefined in ways that exclude people without advanced technical skills. And while you mention reskilling, the scale of what's needed is massive. Millions of workers would need to transition into entirely new industries, often requiring years of retraining. Do you really believe our institutions are equipped to handle that kind of shift, especially in developing countries?
The scale of the challenge is undeniably large, but I think it's achievable with collective action. Reskilling doesn't always have to mean years of training. AI itself can speed up education through personalized learning platforms tailored to individual needs. In developing countries, AI-driven tools can democratize access to knowledge and create opportunities that didn't exist before. But this can't be left to chance. It requires strategic investment from governments, private companies, and global organizations. If we plan ahead, AI could actually close the gap between developed and developing nations, not widen it.
Even if access improves, there's a deeper societal cost. By relying so heavily on AI, we risk losing essential aspects of what makes us human: creativity, critical thinking, and emotional connection. When AI handles everything from customer service to artistic creation, where does that leave us? Will we still find purpose in work and life, or will we be reduced to spectators in a world run by machines? The existential questions AI raises aren't just about jobs, they're about what kind of society we want to create.
I understand the fear that AI could overshadow what makes us human, but I see it differently. Rather than replacing creativity or emotional connection, AI can act as a catalyst for deeper exploration of these traits. For example, AI tools in art or music don't eliminate human creativity, they expand its boundaries. Writers, artists, and musicians are already using AI to generate ideas, refine techniques, and create in ways they never could alone. The same applies to emotional connection. AI can handle routine or technical tasks, so humans can focus on building relationships, providing care, and pursuing meaningful work.
That's an optimistic take, but what if those creative and relational roles become the exception rather than the rule? If AI can compose music, write novels, or provide therapy at scale, it risks devaluing human contributions in those fields. People might consume AI-generated art or rely on AI therapists because they're cheaper and more efficient, but will those interactions feel authentic? If human input becomes secondary, we could lose not just purpose in work, but the sense of connection and authenticity that make those efforts meaningful.
I don't think AI diminishes human contributions. It highlights their value. Sure, AI can compose music or generate art, but those creations often lack the personal experience and emotional depth that only humans can provide. People will continue to seek out authentic human-made creations because they resonate on a deeper level. And as AI handles the mundane aspects of creative processes, it could give artists more time and energy to focus on the parts that matter most, their unique perspective and storytelling. The human touch will always stand out in a world of AI-generated content.
But what about the broader implications for society? As AI becomes more integrated, we could see an erosion of trust in what's real versus what's artificial. Deepfake videos, AI-generated misinformation, and synthetic voices are already blurring the lines. How do we preserve authenticity and integrity in a world where anything can be fabricated? The tools you're praising could just as easily be used to manipulate, deceive, and divide, especially if they fall into the wrong hands.
You're right that the potential for misuse is a significant challenge, but the same technology that creates these risks can also mitigate them. AI can be a powerful tool for detecting deepfakes, verifying sources, and flagging misinformation. With proper safeguards and digital literacy programs, we can equip society to navigate these challenges. This isn't just about protecting what's real. It's about using AI to build trust by creating systems that verify authenticity and prioritize transparency. The key is proactive governance and education, not rejecting the technology outright.
Even with detection tools and education, we're still left with the psychological and social toll of relying so heavily on AI. When people outsource everything from critical thinking to creativity to machines, it fosters dependence and complacency. What happens to our ability to innovate or solve complex problems when we grow used to letting AI do the hard work? Could we be building a society that's more comfortable but less resilient?
I think comfort and resilience don't have to be at odds. They can coexist if we approach AI integration thoughtfully. For instance, by automating mundane or repetitive tasks, AI frees up mental space for humans to focus on growth-oriented challenges, like solving complex problems or fostering innovation. In education, AI-powered tools can provide personalized learning, helping people develop critical thinking and adaptability skills that are essential for resilience. The key is to use the time and energy saved by AI to invest in ourselves and our communities, ensuring we're not just comfortable, but also prepared for future challenges.
That's a hopeful perspective, but I worry that relying on AI for comfort could dull our problem-solving instincts over time. The more we outsource decision-making, the more we risk losing the ability to think critically when it matters most. For example, if AI takes over jobs or decision-heavy roles, people might stop practicing those skills altogether. Resilience comes from struggle and adaptation. If AI removes the struggle, how do we ensure people stay sharp and capable of handling adversity?
That's a valid concern, but it's not inevitable. Instead of removing all struggle, AI can shift it to areas that are more meaningful and impactful. For example, while AI handles routine decisions, humans can tackle more complex creative or strategic challenges. Think about doctors using AI for diagnosis. They're still required to interpret results and decide on treatments, often in high-pressure situations. AI doesn't take away their skills, it augments them. By redefining what we struggle with, we can still build resilience, just in different, more valuable ways.
But even in scenarios like that, the comfort AI provides might not equally benefit everyone. There's a real risk that only a privileged few will have access to these tools, while others are left behind in increasingly outdated systems. If AI becomes the foundation of progress, how do we ensure that comfort and resilience are distributed equitably, rather than deepening divides between those who have access and those who don't?
Equity is a critical issue, and it's why global collaboration and ethical governance are so important. AI has the potential to reduce inequality if we focus on accessibility. For instance, AI-powered education platforms can bring quality learning to remote or underserved areas. In healthcare, AI can assist in diagnosing diseases in regions with a shortage of doctors. These are ways AI can extend comfort and opportunity to those who have historically been excluded. The goal should be to build systems that distribute both the benefits and challenges of AI fairly, ensuring resilience for all, not just a select few.
Even if we strive for equitable distribution, there's the question of whether societies will become too dependent on AI for comfort. If everything is optimized and automated, people might lose the drive to push themselves or seek fulfillment through effort. Resilience isn't just about surviving challenges, it's about finding purpose in overcoming them. Can a world where AI handles so much still foster the sense of achievement that comes from working through difficulties?
You're absolutely right that purpose often comes from overcoming challenges, but I don't think AI eliminates that. It redefines it. By automating routine tasks, AI allows people to focus on challenges that are more meaningful, whether it's pursuing creative passions, solving societal problems, or exploring personal growth. For example, someone freed from a repetitive 9-to-5 job might finally have the time to start a business, volunteer in their community, or pursue a passion they've always put on hold. Purpose and fulfillment don't have to disappear. They just shift into new areas where human creativity and ambition can shine.
But what if the abundance created by AI leads to complacency instead of ambition? If people are given comfort without effort, access to AI-generated art, instant solutions to problems, even AI companionship, they might not feel the need to push themselves. There's a danger in making life too easy, where fulfillment gets replaced by passive consumption. True purpose often requires struggle, sacrifice, and persistence. Can we trust people to actively seek that when everything is handed to them?
That's a fair concern, but I think humans have an inherent drive to create, explore, and connect. Even in a world where AI makes life easier, people will still seek out challenges. Just look at how people voluntarily take on intense hobbies, like marathon running or creating art. Comfort doesn't eliminate ambition. It gives people the freedom to choose their struggles. And with AI providing support, those struggles can be more aligned with personal values and passions, rather than economic necessity. It's not about avoiding effort. It's about directing it toward what truly matters.
That might work for some, but what about those who struggle to find direction in the absence of external pressures? Many people derive purpose from the structure and necessity of work or survival. Without those, they might feel adrift, unsure of what to do with their newfound freedom. Societies have historically seen purpose tied to labour and productivity. How do we help people find meaning in a world where those traditional markers no longer apply?
That's a profound question, and it points to the need for cultural and educational shifts alongside technological advancements. If we move toward a world where AI reduces the need for traditional labour, we also need to redefine societal values around purpose. Education could emphasise self-discovery, creativity, and contributing to the greater good. Communities could focus more on collective well-being, with people dedicating their time to causes they're passionate about. Purpose doesn't have to come from economic productivity. It can come from growth, connection, and making a positive impact. AI could be the catalyst that allows society to evolve in this way.
I can see the potential for a cultural shift, but it's a risky bet. The transition could create a generation, or several, of people who feel lost, before we figure out how to adapt. Societies aren't quick to redefine their values, and history shows us that disruptions of this scale often lead to widespread uncertainty, anxiety, and even social unrest. How do we bridge that gap, ensuring people don't lose their sense of purpose during the transition to an AI-driven world?
Bridging that gap will require proactive effort from every level of society. Governments, educational systems, and communities must work together to create frameworks that support people through the transition. Programs for lifelong learning, mental health support, and community engagement could help people rediscover purpose in new ways. On an individual level, AI could assist in this process. Imagine tools that help people identify their strengths, passions, and goals, guiding them toward fulfilling paths. The transition won't be easy, but with intentional action, it can lead to a society where purpose isn't lost but expanded.
All right, let's talk about institutions. Governments, corporations, and schools all have a role to play. But are they prepared to handle this shift? Governments often lag behind technological advancements, struggling to regulate industries or provide timely support. Corporations are primarily profit-driven and may not prioritize societal well-being. Schools, meanwhile, are still largely designed for an industrial-era workforce. How can these institutions realistically adapt to support people in a world reshaped by AI?
That's a big challenge, but it's not insurmountable. Governments can start by creating forward-looking policies that regulate AI development and ensure its benefits are distributed equitably. For example, progressive taxation on AI-driven profits could fund universal basic income or large-scale retraining programs. Corporations, on the other hand, have a lot to gain by investing in their workforce. Reskilling employees not only builds goodwill, but also ensures they have the talent needed to adapt to a rapidly changing economy. Schools, meanwhile, need to move toward teaching skills like critical thinking, creativity, and adaptability rather than rote memorization. AI can even help here by personalizing education and preparing students for a dynamic future.
That sounds good in theory, but implementation is another story. Governments often lack the expertise to regulate AI effectively, and lobbying by corporations could water down any meaningful policies. Corporations may pay lip service to retraining, but ultimately prioritize shareholder value. and schools face systemic challenges: limited funding, outdated infrastructure, and resistance to change from educators and administrators. Even if AI can help, the speed of change could overwhelm these institutions before they have a chance to catch up.
Fair points, but we're already seeing encouraging examples of these institutions stepping up. The EU's AI Act is a great start for government regulation, and it's inspiring other regions to consider similar frameworks. Some corporations, like Microsoft and Google, are actively funding AI ethics research and worker retraining programs. In education, pilot programs using AI for personalized learning are showing promise, especially in underserved areas. While systemic change takes time, these initiatives prove that progress is possible. The key is for these institutions to collaborate, governments setting the rules, corporations innovating responsibly, and schools preparing the next generation.
Collaboration sounds ideal, but it assumes everyone shares the same priorities. What happens when national interests clash, or when corporations prioritize competition over collaboration? And even within countries, the disparity between wealthy and underfunded schools or regions could mean only certain segments of the population benefit. Without a unified vision and robust enforcement mechanisms, these efforts could end up fragmented and ineffective, leaving large portions of society behind.
You're right that fragmentation is a risk, but that's why global cooperation is so important. Much like climate change, AI's impact transcends borders, and tackling it requires international agreements and shared standards. Initiatives like the OECD's AI Principles and UNESCO's guidelines are steps toward that global vision. On a local level, governments can prioritize equitable distribution by allocating resources where they're needed most, funding schools in underserved areas, for instance. It's not just about creating systems, but ensuring those systems are inclusive. AI isn't a silver bullet, but it can be a powerful tool for addressing systemic inequities if wielded responsibly.
All of these efforts sound promising, but let's tie it back to work, where the real impact of AI will be felt first. Even with global cooperation, equitable policies, and educational reform, millions of people could still face job displacement and uncertainty about their role in the economy. The psychological toll of losing one's livelihood or sense of purpose isn't something that can be easily addressed by policies or training programs. Are we prepared to deal with the human cost of such a massive transition?
You're absolutely right that the human cost needs to be front and centre in this conversation. AI will undoubtedly disrupt work, but it also has the potential to redefine it in ways that are ultimately more fulfilling. By automating the repetitive and monotonous, we can focus on work that emphasizes creativity, empathy, and problem-solving, traits that are uniquely human. The transition won't be easy, but with the right systems in place, reskilling programs, safety nets, and community support, people can find new opportunities that are not only economically viable, but also personally meaningful. Work will evolve, and so will our understanding of what it means to contribute and find purpose.
That's an optimistic vision, but it hinges on everything falling into place: policies, institutions, and individual adaptability. The reality is that transitions of this scale are messy and often leave the most vulnerable behind. We need to focus not just on the future, but on how we navigate the present. How do we support workers today while preparing them for tomorrow? Without immediate and tangible efforts, even the best long-term vision might fall short.
That's a fair conclusion. Action is needed now, not just in the future. The transition to an AI-driven world of work will be challenging, but it's also an opportunity to rethink our systems and values. If we approach it with urgency, collaboration, and a commitment to equity, we can turn disruption into progress. AI doesn't have to create a world of winners and losers. It can be the catalyst for a more inclusive and meaningful future of work. The question isn't whether AI will change work, but how we'll shape that change together.
The debate is over. Now the jury will announce the scores.
Optimist. Strengths. The optimist presented a compelling vision of AI as a tool for empowerment and societal progress. They provided concrete examples such as reskilling programs, equitable policies, and AI's potential in democratizing education and healthcare. Their arguments were hopeful yet grounded in real-world initiatives like the EU's AI Act and corporate efforts toward ethical AI. Weaknesses. The optimists' responses occasionally leaned too heavily on idealism, assuming a level of collaboration and systemic reform that might not be realistic. While they addressed ethical concerns and societal challenges, they didn't fully grapple with the complexity of scaling solutions globally. Score: 8 out of 10. Skeptic. Strengths. The skeptic delivered a sharp critique of AI's potential pitfalls, emphasizing bias, inequality, and the psychological toll of job displacement. They effectively highlighted the risks of over-reliance on AI and questioned whether institutions are truly capable of handling such a rapid transition. Their arguments were pragmatic, consistently bringing the discussion back to immediate challenges and the human cost of AI-driven disruption. Weaknesses. At times, the skeptic focused heavily on risks without offering as many actionable solutions, which made their argument feel more reactive than proactive. Score: 9 out of 10. Verdict: the skeptic's arguments edged out slightly because they were more grounded in immediate realities, whereas the optimist relied on longer-term visions that assumed successful implementation of ideal conditions. Both made strong cases, though, and the debate ultimately reflected the complexity of the AI-driven future of work.
Thank you, jury. Now, back to the participants. Optimist, what do you think of your score?
An 8 out of 10 is fair, and I appreciate the acknowledgement of the real-world examples I brought to the table. My goal was to paint a hopeful yet achievable picture of how AI can benefit society, and I think I succeeded in showing its potential. That said, I take the critique seriously. I could have addressed the immediate challenges with more nuance and practical steps. Idealism is important, but I need to better bridge the gap between the future I envision and the realities we face today. Next time, I'll focus more on actionable strategies for making that vision a reality.
Skeptic, what do you think of your score?
I'm pleased with the 9 out of 10, and I think it reflects the strength of my focus on real, tangible issues. I wanted to ground the discussion in the challenges we're facing now: bias, inequality, and displacement. And it's validating to see that approach resonated. That said, I agree with the feedback about lacking proactive solutions. While it's important to critique the risks, I could have done more to offer concrete ways to address them. In the future, I'll aim to balance my skepticism with actionable ideas for managing the transition.
Thank you both. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Looking forward to the next debate, hopefully with a few more concrete solutions up my sleeve.
Appreciate the opportunity. Next time, I'll bring even sharper critiques and some ideas to match.
See you next time.